Banking and the use of debit cards in real life. A debit card, also known as a check card or bank card, is a payment card that can be used in place of cash to make purchases. The card usually consists of the bank's name, a card number, the cardholder's name, and an expiration date, on either the front or the back. Many of the new cards now have a chip on them, which allows people to use their card by touch, contactless, or by inserting the card and keying in a pin as with swiping the magnetic stripe. These are similar to a credit card, but unlike a credit card, the money for the purchase must be in the cardholder's bank account at the time of the purchase and is immediately transferred directly from that account to the merchant's account to pay for the purchase. Some debit cards carry a stored value with which a payment is made, prepaid cards, but most relay a message to the cardholder's bank to withdraw funds from the cardholder's designated bank account. In some cases, the payment card number is assigned exclusively for use on the internet, and there is no physical card. This is referred to as a virtual card. In many countries, the use of debit cards has become so widespread that they have overtaken checks in volume or have entirely replaced them. In some instances, debit cards have also largely replaced cash transactions. The development of debit cards, unlike credit cards and charge cards, has generally been country-specific, resulting in a number of different systems around the world that are often incompatible. Since the mid-2000s, a number of initiatives have allowed debit cards issued in one country to be used in other countries and allowed their use for internet and phone purchases. Debit cards usually also allow an instant withdrawal of cash, known as a cash advance, acting as an ATM card for this purpose. Merchants may also offer cashback facilities to customers so that they can withdraw cash along with their purchase. There are usually daily limits on the amount of cash that can be withdrawn. Most debit cards are plastic, but there are cards made of metal and rarely wood. There are currently 3 ways that debit card transactions are processed: FPAS, also known as online debit or PIN debit, offline debit, also known as signature debit, and the electronic purse card system. One physical card can include the functions of all 3 types, so it can be used in a number of different circumstances. The 5 major debit card networks are UnionPay, American Express, Discover, MasterCard, and Visa. Other card networks are Star, JCB, Pulse, etc. There are many types of debit cards, each accepted only within a particular country or region, for example, Switch, since merged with Maestro, and Solo in the United Kingdom, Interac in Canada, Carte Bleue in France, EC Electronic Cash, formerly Eurocheck, in Germany, Bancomat/Pago Bancomat in Italy, UnionPay in China, RuPay in India, and FPAS cards in Australia and New Zealand. The use of a debit card system allows operators to package their products more effectively while monitoring customer spending. Online debit system. Online debit cards require electronic authorization of every transaction, and the debits are reflected in the user's account immediately. The transaction may be additionally secured with the personal identification number, PIN, authentication system. Some online cards require such authentication for every transaction, essentially becoming enhanced automatic teller machine, ATM, cards. One difficulty with using online debit cards is the necessity of an electronic authorization device at the point of sale, POS, and sometimes also a separate PIN pad to enter the PIN, although this is becoming commonplace for all card transactions in many countries. Overall, the online debit card is generally viewed as superior to the offline debit card because of its more secure authentication system and live status, which alleviates problems with processing lag on transactions that may only issue online debit cards. Some online debit systems are using the normal authentication processes of internet banking to provide real-time online debit transactions. Offline debit system. Offline debit cards have the logos of major credit cards, for example, Visa or MasterCard. These cards connect straight to a person's bank account, but there is a delay before the money is taken out. Electronic purse card system. Smart card-based electronic purse systems, in which value is stored on the card chip, not in an externally recorded account, so that machines accepting the card need no network connectivity, have been in use throughout Europe since the mid-1990s, most notably in Germany, Geldcard, Austria, Quick Word Card, the Netherlands, Chipnip, Belgium, Proton, Switzerland, Cash, and France, Moneo, which is usually carried by a debit card. In Austria and Germany, almost all current bank cards now include electronic purses, whereas the electronic purse has been recently phased out in the Netherlands. Prepaid debit cards are reloadable and can also be called reloadable debit cards. Users. The primary market for prepaid debit cards has historically been unbanked people, that is, people who do not use banks or credit unions for their financial transactions. Their advantages: prepaid debit cards. Advantages of prepaid debit cards include being safer than carrying cash, worldwide functionality due to Visa and MasterCard merchant acceptance, not having to worry about paying a credit card bill or going into debt, the opportunity for anyone over the age of 18 to apply and be accepted without checks on creditworthiness, and the option to deposit paychecks and government benefits directly onto the card for free. A newer advantage is the use of EMV technology and even contactless functionality, which had previously been limited to bank debit cards and credit cards. Their risks: prepaid debit cards. If the card provider offers an insecure website for the cardholder to check the balance on the card, this could give an attacker access to the card information. If the user loses the card and has not somehow registered it, they will likely lose the money. If a provider has technical issues, the money might not be accessible when a user needs it. Some companies' payment systems do not appear to accept prepaid debit cards. Their types. Prepaid cards vary by the issuer company, key and niche financial players, sometimes collaborations between businesses, purpose of usage, transit card, beauty gift cards, travel card, health savings card, business, insurance, etc., and regions. Plastic card. Plastic cards usually serve as identity documents, thus providing authentication. In combination with other assets that complement the data stored on the card, like PIN numbers, they also serve authorization purposes, most often as bank cards for allowing their holders to do financial transactions. While early and simpler cards feature only hard-to-imitate integrated photographs, security holograms, cloches, or a magnetic strip on which few bytes of personal data could be stored, smart cards, i.e. those equipped with an electronic chip, storage, or RFID, nowadays serve as high-security active electronic documents that allow their holder to qualify for driving cars, driver's license card, receive medical treatment, health insurance cards, do banking, and more. Contact cards must be inserted into a suitable reading device, e.g. magnetic stripe cards. Contactless cards, using near-field communication or RFID. Consumer protections vary, depending on the network used. Visa and MasterCard, for instance, prohibit minimum and maximum purchase sizes, surcharges, and arbitrary security procedures on the part of merchants. Merchants are usually charged higher transaction fees for credit transactions, since debit network transactions are less likely to be fraudulent. This may lead them to steer customers to debit transactions. Consumers disputing charges may find it easier to do so with a credit card, since the money will not immediately leave their control. Fraudulent charges on a debit card can also cause problems with a checking account because the money is withdrawn immediately and may thus result in an overdraft or bounced checks. In some cases, debit card issuing banks will promptly refund any disputed charges until the matter can be settled, and in some jurisdictions the consumer liability for unauthorized charges is the same for both debit and credit cards. Debit cards and secured credit cards are popular among college students who have not yet established a credit history. Debit cards may also be used by expatriate workers to send money home to their families holding an affiliated debit card. The consumer perceives a debit transaction as occurring in real time. The money is withdrawn from their account immediately after the authorization request from the merchant. In many countries, This is correct for online debit purchases. However, when a purchase is made using the credit, offline debit, option, the transaction merely places an authorization hold on the customer's account. Funds are not actually withdrawn until the transaction is reconciled and hard-posted to the customer's account, usually a few days later. This is in contrast to a typical credit card transaction, in which, after a few days delay before the transaction is posted to the account, there is a further period of maybe a month before the consumer makes repayment. Because of this, in the case of an error by the merchant or issuer, a debit transaction may cause more serious problems, for example, overdraft/money not accessible/overdrawn account, than a credit card transaction, for example, credit not accessible due to be over one's credit limit. This is especially true in the United States, where check fraud is a crime in every state, but exceeding one's credit limit is not. Internet purchases. Debit cards may also be used on the internet, either with or without using a PIN. Internet transactions may be conducted in either online or offline mode. Shops accepting online-only cards are rare in some countries, such as Sweden, while they are common in other countries, such as the Netherlands. For a comparison, PayPal offers the customer to use an online-only Maestro card if the customer enters a Dutch address of residence, but not if the same customer enters a Swedish address of residence. Internet purchases can be authenticated by the consumer entering their PIN if the merchant has enabled a secure online PIN pad, in which case the transaction is conducted in debit mode. Otherwise, transactions may be conducted in either credit or debit mode, which is sometimes, but not always, indicated on the receipt, and this has nothing to do with whether the transaction was conducted in online or offline mode, since both credit and debit transactions may be conducted in both modes. Debit cards around the world. In some countries, banks tend to levy a small fee for each debit card transaction. In other countries, for example, the UK, the merchants bear all the costs and customers are not charged. There are many people who routinely use debit cards for all transactions, no matter how small. Some, small, retailers refuse to accept debit cards for small transactions, where paying the transaction fee would absorb the profit margin on the sale, making the transaction uneconomic for the retailer. Some businesses do not accept card payments at all, even in an era with declining use of cash. This still happens for a variety of reasons, tax avoidance by small business included. Thank you for watching. Another video is coming, keep sharing.